All right. What is up to guys? A little late today, but we got an action-packed banger today. We got Myron versus Nick Matau, whatever, however you say your name. He's the one who debated Sneeko. But ooh, shit. Yeah, we got an action jam-packed today. Let's get right into this shit. Appreciate everybody for stopping by. Let's go.
The bitch shaking it, showing it. You this, you that. We laughing at them together.
Oh!
So stop treating these mother like they mean something.
Let's go to TikTok. All right, and I don't like wasting anybody's time, so let's get right into this. I want to see how this debate goes, because how do you, if the ICC says Benjamin is a war criminal and that he's wanted, and even the humanitarian organizations say that this is a genocide. If everybody's saying it's a genocide, the world's saying it's a genocide, how does one person come to a conclusion that it isn't? Is kind of insane to me, but we're gonna see the insanity right here in our face.
Embarrassed. All right. I think, to be fair, Nick, I think because let's be honest here, you got a lot of that watch you. I have a lot of people that don't like watch me. We're probably not going to convince each other. But what we can do is clearly outline our positions, and then we'll go back to Iran. So what we can do is here, I think it's a genocide. You don't think it's a genocide. So what we'll do is we already had discussed it. You can just give your position, then I'll give my position, then we'll move on to discriminate bombing. Why I think it's indiscriminate bombing. Why you could say why you think it's discriminate to a degree, or what your position was. I don't want to mischaracterize it. Just to be fair, so people that are coming in and watching now, they know our positions. And then we can get into Iran, because this guy before that was moderating, bro. He's the worst. He kept muting me. There was a lot of times where I noticed I would talk and I look and my mic is muted. So it was a nightmare to have him as a moderator, because he wanted to jump in and interrupt me all this time. So it was very annoying. So do you want to hit it first with why you think it's not a genocide, or do you want to go first? We don't have to debate. We'll just put our argument there, then let the people go. So for the sake of brevity.
Yeah, mine is very clear. It just doesn't meet the definition of genocide that's put in by the 1948 convention, ratified in 1951. But you're the one making the positive claim, so maybe you should go first.
Yeah, so basically, genocide is the killing of a people in whole or in part. I understand that you talked about founding documents or how it originated or anything else like that. I understand that position that you were giving.
So we can show you the definition. Oh God. So we can look at it ourselves. Genocide is an internationally recognized crime that is defined as any of 5 specific acts committed with the intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. The term was coined in 1944 by Polish lawyer Raphael Lemkin and later codified international law by the United Nations. According to the UN Genocide Convention, defined acts include killing, causing serious harm, deliberately inflicting destructive conditions, preventing births, and forcibly transferring children.
But, I'm keeping it nice and simple. The definition of genocide is the killing of a people, whole or in part. I would argue that what the IDF did constitutes that and fulfills it. The reason why I say this is because genocide experts, human rights groups have all pretty much concluded, for the most part, of course there's going to be some people that don't agree with it, that it is a genocide.
זה בלתי נתפס, אבל כמעט שנתיים שישראל מבצעת ג'נוסייד בפלסטינים ברצועת עזה. ג'נוסייד הוא דבר שלא אמור לקרות, לא פה ולא בשום מקום ולא בכלל. זה מסוג הדברים שפשוט לא יכולה להיות להם הצדקה. לא האמנו שנכתוב את הדוח הזה אי פעם, אבל אנחנו גם חיים בתוך מציאות שלא האמנו שנגיע אליה. על סמך המידע והנתונים שהצטברו ועל בסיס ניתוח עמוק ויסודי של הסיטואציה, ברור לנו שישראל פועלת באופן מכוון ומתואם להביא להרס טוטלי של הפלסטינים.
And the reason Israel is very coordinated in what they do is because of the times they've eliminated leaders by just striking their homes, knowing where they are. Another time where they have the pager incident where they got Hezbollah operatives with pagers that they planted 10 years ago. So Israel is very strategic in how they eliminate their opponents, but when it comes to Gaza, they say, oh, well, he was in an apartment building hiding with civilians. So they blow up the whole apartment building because they were hiding with civilians and say, well, that's the only way we can get them. When in reality, they know how they have other ways to get people. So
ברצועת עזה.
that's the real problem.
זה הרס אלים מכוון של קבוצה מובחנת, במיוחד קבוצה אתנית, לאומית, דתית או גזעית, כקבוצה. כלומר, הקורבן בג'נוסייד הוא לא רק האינדיבידואל.
Anyways,
so I know you make the argument that, you know, that's an appeal to.
Yeah, we didn't have to watch that because we know Israel's committed a genocide. We've already seen the footage. We've heard the phone calls. We've heard the phone call with the little girl who was in the car where she said she's bleeding and she doesn't want to get blood on her dress. And then you hear the IDF soldiers shooting through the car again, which is a war crime because they're civilians. Also, what makes it a war crime and a genocide is that they're not allowing the fucking ambulance to what makes it a war crime is they're not allowing the ambulance to get to the civilians that are being injured. They're killing them as well. What makes it genocide is that they're just killing Palestinians indiscriminately, regardless of if they're Hamas or Hezbollah.
To authority. I think in this situation, this would be an exception based on obviously the nuance and the specificity of what genocide is and comparing it to other historical events that have had less people be killed while still being constituted as a genocide. So that's my position. That's why I think it's a genocide with you know, and then you add in, then you can also add in, because you had mentioned the other term that you gave before. You can mention the starvation, the blockade, not getting supplies in, the testimony of the doctors that talked about, you know, the difficulty of being able to have sterile tools to operate on people from, you know, significant injuries. You know, I think when you take the totality of the circumstances, right, the conflict, the war, getting bombs dropped on them, not bombs, okay, and then having no access to food, no access to water. I know you said, hey, the worst part of it was 2 months, fair, but I still think that's unacceptable, okay? So I think when you combine all of these different things and you compare all the different events that were going on in the 3-year period, I think this overqualifies for a genocide. And many scholars and human rights organizations would agree with me. Obviously, you're entitled to your opinion. You think that it's not a genocide. That's fine. Do you have anything that you wanted to?
Yeah, first I just want to say to those watching on TikTok, I had to turn off his camera because TikTok's lame and it says unoriginal content. So if you guys want to see his face, just go over to YouTube. TikTok. Anyways, yeah, so a couple things. One, unless I misheard you, it seems like you missed, again, the keyword of intent, which is the most important thing when it comes to genocide. So when you look at the totality of things, the point is that, again, when we talk about intent and when you actually look at the Genocide Convention and commentary on genocide and all of the human rights experts on all of this, they will say that it requires what's known as dolus specialis, which is special intent. The difference between dolus specialis and just even intent by itself is specifically that you're not combining it with something else. Like, oh, they're trying to fight. Earlier when we were debating for, I think it was like 2 hours, you did admit that you're not like defending Hamas. You agree that they use human shields. You agree that they do all this stuff. Dolus specialis means you're doing something specifically to do genocide. Not we're trying to actually get this, but we also don't really care if a lot of people are killed.
My response to that, and I'm glad that you brought this up. My response to that is, I think with the blockade, not getting in humanitarian aid, not getting in supplies, I would argue that that was intent, because I mean it's foreseeable that if you don't allow medical supplies to get in or food or water, right, that hospitals desperately need, you can foresee that this is going to lead to imminent death of people. Now, you might not agree with me on that, which is totally fine, but that's my interpretation of it. That's my argument. And
yeah, but see,
I don't want to interrupt. Go ahead. Give your full monologue. I'm not going to interrupt. Go ahead.
Well, the issue, no, I'll just go off of that because that's fine. The issue is that, as I proved to you earlier, and we can look at the World Food Program from the United Nations saying that about 94,000 tons. Honest, if you guys are on YouTube, just refresh. You will hear him because many people can hear him. Just refresh. Can you say something real quick, Myron?
Yeah, test 1 2 3. Guys, give me ones in the chat if you guys can hear me. And then for your chat, I guess if they can hear me, they can give a 1. I can turn it up if they need me.
Nope, I can see the mixer going up. Yeah, I see it. Okay. I think YouTube's fine. If you guys can't hear, just refresh. It's probably on your end. Anyways, so the problem is with, so with the humanitarian aid not going in, so I got to look up the exact article, but when it talks about humanitarian aid, it specifically says that in the commentary that you actually are allowed to temporarily stop aid, right? It's not a permanent thing. You're allowed to do that. And on top of that, it specifically says that you need to make sure there's adequate aid, not daily aid, not weekly aid. There needs to be adequate.
Well, the problem with the aid is that not only are they not getting. Okay, they're getting the aid, but they're not allowing them to get the aid. They'll shoot people while they're getting the aid.
As I told you, look at the World Food Program. They said 94,000 tons of food. Now, to be fair,
And there's proof of that. You can go look that up. Go type in Google IDF soldiers shooting Palestinians while getting aid. It's pretty, it's pretty easy to find.
Where they say it's 100,000 or 110,000, but I can pull up the one or send it to you later where it says 94,000 tons of food equals. Yep, 94,000 tons of food specifically equals for 1 million people 4 months. So again, for Gaza, since there's about a little over 2 million people, that's 2 months of food. They had 380,000 tons of food, according to the United Nations, even mixed with COGAT data, etc. They had 380,000 tons of food go in during the ceasefire, those 2-month-long ceasefire that was prior to the about 2-month-long blockade of food. And so 380,000, again, divided by 94,000 is 4 times 2 months is 8 months. So they had about, give or take, 8 months of food. And that is actually an overrepresentation of how many calories per day. I think from what I remember, the UN says that's like counting something like 2,800 calories per day. That's not even like a 2,000 calorie per day. 8 months of food. The blockade was only for 2 months, which is allowed per the article. They had adequate food, and that is based off of the World Food Program's data and the United Nations data / COGAT.
Okay. So you would say, and again, I'm not even doing this to argue because we're going to have our positions. We're not going to agree. I just want to understand. So you're saying the fact that they brought food in negates the intent to kill them.
The fact that they have adequate negates them violating the Geneva Conventions for.
Fair. Okay.
Which is exactly why I just said it doesn't matter that they brought the food in. While they're getting the food, they're literally shooting. I swear to God. Like, guys, I promise you, I don't, like, you can go on X and find this shit, like, because that's where all the unfiltered shit is at. Like, it's easy to find this shit, these videos.
And again, I still think 2 months is ridiculous. And again, the problem with this food stuff is you're going to get different stories. New York Times will report something, Haaretz will report something. It's very wildly different on this topic, especially with the starvation. Because, for example, like it was enough of a media spectacle for both France and the United Kingdom to say, well, if Netanyahu doesn't stop the blockade, we're going to recognize Palestine, right? So, but that's a whole other thing. When I'm looking at it from the totality of the circumstances, I understand your argument. I see your argument. You're saying, look, they had enough of food. Just because it didn't get in does not mean that they're not provided. I see your argument. My argument is when you add in the bombs dropping, when you add in the lack of water, when you add in the lack of medical supplies, when you add in the humanitarian aid, I'm saying there's so many different components that one can argue that the intent was to get them killed with everything that was going on in the totality of the circumstances. I know that you're isolating, food as one, and I can see your argument. It's a good argument, right? Hey, they had sufficient food. I would say, okay, let's say we get rid of the food. Fine. I would argue the lack of, them destroying all these hospitals, the utensils not being there, not being clean. We've seen several doctors. One guy went on Tucker talking about the horrors that they witnessed. So I'm saying I think intent was sufficient. You might not. We can agree to disagree on that. Did you want to disagree?
The problem is sure, but the problem is that overall, when you're talking about, hey, these are all symptoms if you add it all together, not individually, but those are also symptoms of war that is specifically in densely populated warfare fighting, as you admitted earlier, a guerrilla warfare unit. So these exact same things you're saying would also be evident in specifically the unique condition of Gaza. When we talk about the amount of aid that's going in to isolate that one, put in more aid in like those 2 years by themselves than Saudi Arabia has done to Yemen in like 10 plus years. In fact, I can't, other than maybe, and I'd have to look at the exact numbers. Agreed. That being said, I'd have to look at the exact numbers, but other than maybe when the Allies did that huge amount of food airdrops during World War II, and even then I think it's more equal, other than maybe that one, I can't think of any other conflict where the rate of food or aid going into an area has been even equal, let alone higher than what has brought into Gaza. And so when you're saying like if this equals genocide, I get you're saying there's a totality of other things, but when you're adding that onto it amongst other things, then either you're saying there's a lot more genocides that have not been classified as genocides, in which case you're watering down the term, and then I say fine, call it a genocide, and now I don't care, because the reason I care about genocide now is because it's a very serious accusation. It's a very serious thing to do. But if you water it down to apply to a broader sense of things, well, now I don't care anymore.
Well, again, that's why I said it. So I think it's so important that we just both put our positions out there just put it out there, fully out there, and then people can make their decisions. Fair.
Well, the problem then would be, Nick, that we're funding the genocide. You see what I'm saying? Like, I get you don't care. I get it. Who the fuck gives a fuck about Gaza, right? But we would be funding it. This is the real problem, is that we're funding them to do this type of stuff. We're giving them the weapons.
And look, I'll give you credit. Like that's a good, very compelling argument from the food perspective. But my thing is, like, I'm looking at it from the totality that there's no way that you can't argue that there was malicious intent there to get them killed, knowing that you're withholding certain supplies that are critical for, sustenance, healthcare, all these other things. But that's fine. Discriminate. Do you want to take it first, and I can go into that? My argument is, my position is that there was discriminate and indiscriminate bombing. I think for you were saying the indiscriminate bombing didn't exist.
I'm saying indiscriminate bombing. When you say indiscriminate bombing, you're not talking about of like concrete and structures. You're talking about of the people, correct?
Both.
Okay, well, I don't care unless the argument's like concrete aside. I don't particularly.
You kept talking past each other, by the way, because I noticed you kept bringing up like how much the infrastructure destroyed, how much the infrastructure destroyed, how many people died. I think that's where me and you kind of see eye to eye, because I look at both, the structures and the people. But
yeah, so for me, I don't give two shits about their structure. I think anything that can be used as an offensive capability should be destroyed. I just saw Gaza actually a couple weeks or 3 weeks ago. I saw inside of it there's still a lot of stuff standing that I thought that could be used as an offensive capability. Now, if we're trying to combine that, which is what you were doing earlier, with genocide, because of the totality of things, one of the things outside of the
Guys, you know how many buildings, a building with a fucking roof, like what the fuck, like anything in reality could be used as an offensive capability. What type of shit is that? Like, what, like, nigga ain't never played a game before? Like, a nigga ain't never played Call of Duty? Like, the fuck, any type of cover, building, hiding spot could be used as an offensive capability. So do we just get to bomb everything? Like, anything could be used as that. What the fuck? Like, what couldn't be used as a fucking offensive capability? Like, that's so broad. Like, what structure couldn't be used? A bathroom hut? Like one bath, like in the junk? Like, I don't get it. Bro said if it could be used as an offensive capability, we'll destroy it. What type of shit is that? The power plants, the bridges could be used as an offensive capability. Shooting at the ships coming on. All right, so we just destroyed the bridge. So the bridge with all the civilians on it, they're standing on it. Just because it could be used as an offensive capability, we destroy the bridge. The hospital. We know that their Hamas might be in there. So we're going to blow up the whole hospital because it could be used as an offensive. Like, what?
The food is specifically the indiscriminate bombing is what you said. And so we're obviously talking about human lives, not concrete aside. Fuck their concrete. I don't give a shit. In fact, there's reports out there that specifically talk about how Hamas used a lot of rebar and things that are supposed to go into buildings to actually make them stronger. They actually used it in tunnels. And so there was reports of buildings that were collapsing that didn't even strike, but they were close enough. And because they were not, they didn't have the rebar and strength inside.
Wait, Hamas was using tunnels? So, wait, Hamas is using tunnels under the buildings, so we blow up the whole building.
Buildings, because of what Hamas did, some of these buildings are collapsing. Fuck their concrete. I don't give a shit about that. But when we're talking about human lives, specifically those that are of innocent civilian lives, when you see about, I saw in October 2025, I don't remember the exact date, there was a report that came out that said 81% of the buildings, infrastructure, etc., was either damaged or destroyed. Now, damage can be pretty loose, but still, when you see such a high number of buildings that are hit, and you see that the death toll, assuming Hamas's numbers are even correct, which I don't believe, because they lie every single war about the amount of civilian per Hamas have died.
Just when you see that argument, how many would you say died roughly
in Gaza?
Yeah, roughly. You don't have to use the Hamas ministry. Like, what do you?
Well, so what I can do is go through history and Hamas, like for example in Led, they got the number of death correct, but what they lied about was how many Hamas were killed versus civilians, and it wasn't even close. For example, if you go look at Led, I'm pretty sure it's Led. They said that they lost 50 Hamas fighters 2 years after the war had ended. Came out and said they killed up to 700, and of course the whole world was like, Israel's lying, blah blah blah. 2 years after the war had ended, in a Haaretz article, Hamas came out and admitted that they lost 600 to 700 Hamas fighters during that war. They waited for the world to move on, waited almost 2 years, and then they said, hey, actually was right. We were lying. But they didn't get the total death wrong. They got the ratio incorrect, or they lied. And so I don't know how many have been killed. What I do know is that, again, as I said earlier,
Would it be fair to say you think it's less than 70?
Less than 70,000?
Yeah. You think they overrepresented that number?
Well, I know that they've used natural deaths in their death toll. I know they've used people that Hamas themselves have killed because they kill Palestinians that don't agree with them or go against them. We know this to be a fact. I've seen those names, like the report of Hamas killing them, and they've been on the death toll list. So, but then you're right. There's also people that are still under the rubble. According to the Gaza Ministry of Health, there's only up to 10,000. Everyone has this idea that once they move the rubble, there's going to be 200,000 bodies. No, the fuck it's not. Even Hamas themselves, the Gaza Ministry of Health said there's about 8 to 10,000 missing. Even if we assume that's 100% death rate and they're just not missing because they're just not tracking where they're at, even if it was 100%, that's an extra 10,000 on the death toll. But no, I have no idea. We can use 70,000, but I want to know, not is that 70,000 civilians? What is the separation between civilian and terrorists? Because if it's a 2-to-1 ratio, dude, the world average when airstrikes actually kill somebody, it's 5 to 7 civilians per 1 death. In the region, in Aleppo 2016, it was closer to 28 civilians per 1 terrorist death. So I don't care so much about the number. Obviously, I'm against war. I think war is better to not be in it, but I'm not a pacifist. I'm not a If you start war, I don't do this whole like, well, it needs to be proportionate. No, the war needs to happen until you accomplish the goals of war.
Okay. So here's I'll give my take on this, and I think we talked past each other as well with this talk. So my argument is that there was both discriminate and indiscriminate bombing, and my foundation for this, why I'm arguing this, is you have a place like Gaza, which is extremely densely populated with 2.2 million people, right? You got a bunch of hospitals, etc. The air campaign that launched, so I think me and you both agree that it was thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of bombs that were dropped, or bombing campaigns, airstrikes that were done, right? In order for you to bomb an area that densely populated and destroy 80% of the infrastructure, you have to indiscriminately bomb. Like, it's just like, like 1 + 1 is 2. So when you add in 80% of the infrastructure, I'll go conservative, 70% of the infrastructure being gone, right? The bombing of hospitals, the bombing of religious institutions, the bombing of camps that people were told to go to where they would be safe, right? When you're bombing all these different places, there's no way that you're not indiscriminately bombing. Now, I want to be clear about this. Am I saying every single air campaign was indiscriminate? Of course not. Some were discriminate, where they're like, hey, we know where Abu Ubaidah is. We can do a direct strike. We're going to go get him. We can maybe minimize the casualties here. But there were other times where, they probably were indiscriminate. Like, hey,
Guys, we already seen this before. We just got to watch it. We just got to look at it again. We just gotta look at it again. Hold up. We've already seen this. We've already seen this. It won't load. But guys, this is Gaza before, and then this is Gaza after. Like, and I wish it would let us zoom in. There's no way you're not indiscriminately bombing people, bro. Look at this. Look at this after. There's nothing there. Like, Hamas was everywhere. Over in here, Hamas was every building. Like, here, look at these buildings that are unusable. It's not even like they're not touched. They are unusable still. Buildings coming down. Like, there's no way in hell you can tell me, oh, Hamas is everywhere. This is probably one of the last hospitals left. I hope, but they don't even look like they can use these buildings. Like, look at these buildings, look like they're falling apart. Like, that's what they have left, and it's like there's no way. It's everywhere. Imagine if we left Iran like this. Imagine if we left Tehran. Let's watch this. Look at this. They still got plenty of buildings. Presidential complex and committee. They got plenty of buildings. Okay. Look at this. They still have plenty of buildings here after this bombing right here. They still have plenty of buildings. Everything looks the same but this. There is no fucking way. Imagine if it looked like this and everything was just gone. All this was just gone. Like that would be the same. That's literally this is what he's arguing.
Think of guys in here, blow it up. It is what it is. You know, we could deal with the ratios, etc. And a lot of people, and I'm very cautious to say this. I didn't want to say this in the debate before, but I'm gonna bring it up because I'm very skeptical, right? Like I'm not one of these like morons that's like, oh, I'm just gonna believe all the Hezbollah. Different reports put out that somewhere between 70 to 90% of the people that were killed in Gaza were civilians, right? They say somewhere between only 10 to 20 were.
That was debunked.
Hamas.
That was debunked. I can explain.
It depends on who.
No, I can
ask,
explain.
right?
It comes from Abraham. I can't remember his last name is, and he himself admitted on X that he was pretty much being disingenuous. But a couple things.
There was also an IDF internal document that came out that talked about
there wasn't.
this.
So that was what Abraham said. He said that he personally saw one, and when even his own side was asking, "Can he see it?" he never ended up producing it. The IDF came out and said, "We don't even have this document," because it was even also in talking about there were separate documents talking about like security force, and the IDF said, "We don't even track them. That's not even part of our organization." And so you're lying. And so he could have debunked the IDF. It would have been major news by just producing the document. Still to this day, he never did.
Imagine they said we don't even track the civilians in there, so you know they're just bombing them because they don't give. Oh, we didn't think there was. I'm trying to tell you that like we don't. How do you not even track the civilians that are there? If you should know. How you know where Hamas is at if you don't know where the civilians are at? I don't get it.
On top of that, the 80 to 90% civilians, what he did was he took an arbitrary date, okay, and he said 8,900 people were killed that had named fighters from just Hamas and PIJ. He ignored every other terrorist organization. There's dozens of them, including PRC, Army of Islam, Mujahideen Brigades, PFLP, DFLP. He ignored all of those. He ignored anyone from the not military wing of Hamas. He counted them as civilians, which obviously is even international law wouldn't state that. And then on top of that, he ignored everyone that didn't have a name. So anyone who ambushed an IDF soldier and the IDF soldiers turned and killed that person from them coming out of a tunnel or a building or a hospital, whatever, it doesn't matter where, he didn't count any of those. He counted them all as civilians. So that's where the whole 80 to 90% civilian came. It's something that nobody should accept unless you're completely biased. It is, if the IDF did the same thing on the opposite end, I would be telling Zionists, don't use that. That's ridiculous.
Yeah,
but
and
real quick,
go ahead.
I just want to say, because to get back to the indiscriminate, as you said, 80%, or you said you'll go conservative, even 70% of the building destroyed, then why is the number so significant?
I hate how he just doesn't let Myron answer that question.
Significantly different, because the death
glazes back over to this.
Hamas right now is a little over 3%. And that's, again, that's not civilians. That's including all deaths, terrorists, civilians, and everything. If it was indiscriminate bombing and you don't give a you're just bombing regardless if there's a child there, a Hamas guy there, a woman, man, whatever, then you would see that the 70% of destroyed buildings, I don't know if you know, but if a building collapses on you, you're probably going to die. Then you would see about 70% of the population dead, or at least something close. But we're not getting within 5 or 10% of that. We're at 3% and 70%. That shows that it's not indiscriminate bombing. Now, if you're talking about indiscriminate bombing of like the poor little buildings, okay, fine, I'll concede that, but I also don't give a shit.
And that's and again, this is why it's so important that we're talking now versus the other guy getting it, muting me and stuff like that. Like, that's what I meant when I was talking about indiscriminate bombing. I was counting both infrastructure and people, because if the infrastructure is gone, right? Well, these are homes, these are there might have been tools there that they could have used, hospitals, etc. So that's why when I said indiscriminate bombing, I was
It doesn't show us anymore. Killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or part, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. So, okay, If I bomb 70% of infrastructure and I make sure they can't return back to their homes, am I deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction? He's like, well, they bombed 70% of homes, but only 3% died. I mean, what are they supposed to go back to if they bombed everything? So they're now displacing them again, moving them more, which would be genocide.
Counting both the civilians and the infrastructure. Now, to be charitable to your argument, because you're saying, well, look, they destroy 70% of the stuff. Why do only 3% of the people die? My response to that was, well, some people, the people moved, right? Obviously, there were some people that were stubborn that stayed and said, I'm not leaving. There were other people that moved south towards Rafah, and then some people went to camps or whatever. So, yeah, the reason why it's not going to line up is because a lot of people moved. But my argument is that it's indiscriminate bombing because they destroyed both the infrastructure and people died in that process. So I'm
but you're using that for genocide, though. You're using that for genocide. If you didn't use this argument for genocide, then we wouldn't even be arguing this right now.
I was using this argument to say it's indiscriminate bombing. I didn't even bring genocide into this. I don't know why. I don't know how that got brought up or whatever, but I was making the argument that, they're indiscriminately bombing. That's what I was saying. And then genocide came up later, but that wasn't really attached to it.
Okay, but earlier you admitted, and you straight up said, I was right, that Hamas uses these civilian areas and they controlled every part of Gaza before October 7th. So what exactly would you like to attack if it's not civilian buildings?
So here's the thing. The reason why I'm so hard on why I'm so critical of them is because they have a very capable intelligence program. And you know this, your audience, maybe for your audience, my audience, they have very intelligence intel apparatus between the Shin Bet, 8300, Mossad, etc. They can do targeted strikes, and they are the number one when it comes to assassinations. So to me, when I look at the capabilities of Israel, and then the knowledge that they have, the amount of informants that they have in Gaza, where they're able to track these guys down and, have eyes.
They don't have that many informants in Gaza. I'll tell you why. The reason they have.
Oh my God. Guys, my nigga interrupts my nigga all the time. This shit is so crazy. When he says something, he's like, oh, no, they don't have that. Or when he was like, no, the IDF doesn't have that document. What makes your information more true than his? That's why it's so funny. He could just interrupt. No, that's not true. This nigga's in the fucking he's in the he's Mossad.
In Lebanon is because a lot of people hate Hezbollah, and there's a lot of even Christians and stuff. You can't really have that in Gaza, and if you do, they're not going to ever get to high-end positions, because in Gaza, when you go there, they're just going to be like, hey, what family are you from? And let's say you're Mossad agent, you're like, oh, I'm from this family. They're going to be like, no, that's my family. I know they can't have that in Gaza.
That. It's not, of course, again, I'm giving you all the different tools that they're utilizing to do their strikes. So when they have these capabilities, I just look at it like, okay, you have these capabilities. Why are you bombing the entire area, destroying 70% of the infrastructure, killing a bunch of people, when you have capabilities where you can assassinate someone like Ismail Haniyeh in a oppositional country secretly, right? Or or when they did that Operation Rising Lion, where they're able to get behind enemy lines, assemble drones, attack them from behind, destroy their air defense. You have the capability of doing all these things, but in Gaza, where Hamas is a joke of a military group, let's be honest, they're a rinky-dink paramilitary group using World War II weaponry. You can't go ahead and be more sophisticated with your attacks on here.
Why would they? Why would they? It's the same thing of when we took out Osama bin Laden. It was a completely different type of operation than when we're bombing other areas like Mosul, for example. It's not because you're just choosing one time to do this and one time to do the other. It's completely different operations. For Gaza, they made it very clear. They didn't say we're going after every single person that puts on a green headband and screams Allahu Akbar. They don't care about that. You're not going to defeat the ideology of Hamas. They'll either continue to exist because there's always going to be Islamist extremists, or they'll just find another group. But that's never right. But that's never what Israel said. Israel, one sec. Said that they wanted to eliminate the offensive capabilities of Hamas or terrorists. So for that, you absolutely take down that building, and you absolutely should. And the first thing you should do to make sure you don't do genocide is get them out of that area. And that's why you see a 3% death rate for a 70% destruction of buildings.
Okay. What I'm saying, though, is that I get that, but this is
Hold up. $2.2 million. $66,000. That's a lot of fucking people. So you kill 66,000 Hamas Like that's a lot of people. You killed 66,000 Hamas officials. That's what you claim. That's what we're saying right now. We killed 66,000 Hamas agents.
That's exactly why.
That's how many were in Gaza.
Right
66,000. Hamas had that many people. They had 66,000 people. Come on, bro.
They had been a bit more patient, a bit more refined, be a bit more discriminate, not rely so much on lavender and these, ridiculous ratios. I know what people are going to say. Hey, well, these ratios are the best in modern warfare. Fine. But it's not, it's not the 1950s anymore. It's not.
What's wrong with lavender exactly?
Well, that was the AI program that they were using to target.
They don't use that solely. There's like a system of like 8 different things. Lavender is one thing. We do the same thing. So does every other.
It's one of them. And
what's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that.
Well, it was having some pretty high ratios of, Hamas fighter to civilians. So, and again,
right. That's why there's another 7 steps or whatever it is. It's not like they just do that only.
Here's the thing. You're saying, hey, it's a war, just do it. I'm saying, cool, you do that. This is why everyone hates Israel now. Does that make sense? So they looked at it like, let's just bomb the place. Let's get rid of these guys. And this is exactly why Israel's the most hated country in the world right now, because in their pursuit of removing Hamas by any means necessary and bombing the entire infrastructure, they killed a lot of people. I think that's irrefutable. A significant amount of innocent people, a lot of children. This looks horrible. And this is why no one likes it. And the thing is that they have the ability to do better and assassinate. They're the number one country for assassination. So
can you, well, hold on, they have done better. Can you name anyone else that will actually? First off, remember, Gaza is very unique because, for example, in Mariupol, when Russia goes in the first 25 days, there's some reports. We don't know the actual numbers because Russia still controls them. They won't allow anyone to go check it. They won't allow anyone to investigate it. But there's some numbers based off of satellite imagery and mass graves. And remember, Mariupol is a place of like, I think 410,000. So it's like 1/4, 1/5 the size of Gaza. In 25 days, so let's just call it a month, they killed about as many people. And again, some reports would say even more than did in Gaza in the whole almost 3 years now. And again, that's in a place that has significantly smaller population. So if you go per capita, it definitely is a lot more. They did that in 1 month. Now, why did Russia not kill even more than that? Because the Ukrainians, and just like any other war in history, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, they got to get the out of the way. But the Gazans, we were in a very unique position. Not only is it a tiny, tiny little strip of land, but the Arabs said, you guys, close the door on them, you guys stay in there. So even with that context, again, we have a 3% death, right? And we have 70% destruction of buildings, if not more. So that shows very clearly that they did go out of their way to make sure they didn't kill people, because if they didn't give a these percentages would be, if not the same, closer to the same. Yeah, that's just math.
And I see what you're saying, like, oh, well, it's only 3%. I'm just not going to accept that. And the reason why I'm not going to accept that is because right? Keep in mind, October 7th happened. They lost 1,200 people. And then what did they do in retaliation? They responded by bombing Gaza, destroying 70% of the infrastructure, and killing 70,000 plus people, many of them being children. So again, this is like that crazy double standard that I criticize Zionists for.
Like I said, there's no way because the math comes out to 66,000. There's no way there were 66,000 Hamas soldiers, guys. 66 there's 66,000 Hamas soldiers. Really?
We talk about Palestinians, it's like, it's war, bro. It's no big deal. 70,000, that's casualty of war. They shouldn't have started the war, right? But then
I wanted the Palestinians to get out. I wanted them to not be in that area.
I'm giving you the typical Zionist / government thing. But when we talk about it, right? 1,200 of them die. It's a catastrophe. It's the worst thing ever. We're going to get them and we're going to destroy them. I mean, Yoav Gallant literally said, we're going to cut off the water. We're going to cut off the food. They're human animals, blah, blah, blah. So my issue is that we do not exercise the same degree of, humanity for Palestinians that we do for, and then we give it full-on authority and power. You know what? Just bomb them. Who cares? You kill 70,000. It's only 3% while destroying 70% of the infrastructure. No big deal.
Right. It's like we killed 70,000 and we destroyed all the infrastructure. So 70,000 are dead and they have nowhere to go back to. I feel like you're deliberately, right here, inflicting on a group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. It doesn't have to just be in whole either. So everybody forget
here,
in
right?
part.
Yeah, but the difference is one is a response.
I get that. And you made the argument earlier that proportionality doesn't matter. I think it does, and that is a big reason why their reputation is in the now internationally, and this is why so many people don't like it. because I know what you're saying. Proportionality might not matter from a warfare standpoint, from a military standpoint, from a strategic standpoint, but I'm talking from a holistic perspective where this looks optically horrible for it is why they are an isolated country now. This is why no one likes it. So I see what you're saying, but in my eyes, you're saying that the ends justify the means. I'm saying they don't justify, and Israel's painted themselves in a corner and hurt themselves diplomatically long term.
Yeah, a couple things, and sure, I agree slightly to that, but there's a couple problems. One, again, you're trying to both sides of the situation. One's a response, and one. I agree with you. If Hamas had any bearing or smart, there was a poll done by the Arab Research Institute after showing that Gazans and Palestinians in the West Bank had an 89% support to the military wing of Hamas after what they did on October 7th, even being informed what happened on October 7th. 89% positive rating for them. So if the Palestinians were actually intelligent and Hamas was actually intelligent, they would know you probably shouldn't start a war with somebody who will kick your ass. As you said earlier, America is Big Daddy, and so they get to do this, and this. I agree with you 100%, and we should do that because we are Big Daddy. Same thing in this regional conflict. You don't start something like that and then cry victim after the fact. When we keep saying 70,000, 70,000, 70,000, I have no idea what that ratio is.
Yeah, but we don't get to be Big Daddy and still kill and still do whatever we want, and people still look at us nicely. See what I'm saying? Like, yeah, you can go in there and bomb them, but when you start killing civilians and people are reporting that, you don't look so nicely anymore, okay?
The reason I know it's actually not as bad as
Which is exactly why Trump didn't bomb the bridge that the civilian Iranians were standing on, because if he would have did that, he would have looked even worse than he already did, bombing Iran and killing the Ayatollah.
Some people will say 50, some people will say, I'm saying even if it's 50-50, that's unacceptable, is my argument.
It's not. And so the reason is because, again, if it was truly doing indiscriminate bombing the way I at least thought you were saying before, if they were truly
that's not your fault. That was a bad host. You kept muting me. This is fine. Like that you didn't hear, because I was combining both, but it's fine. Go ahead.
Right, but if we're talking about that, if they truly were doing genocide, because again earlier their whole claim was that the totality of genocide, then I would have no problem talking about this. I'd still be pro. I would say they need to do better, but the problem is we always start off with pro-Palestinian saying things, buzzwords, genocide, for example, etc. And then when we get into the arguments, we start going into the like, well, it's just wrong that they have this many deaths. Okay, but that's not genocide. Now, as for how many deaths there are, again, it's actually not that high. Now, to answer your question on why is so hated and everything, I think a significant amount is propaganda and also double standards, sometimes singular standards that are held against Israel. Because
but when did it come though, Nick?
When did it increase a lot?
Yeah,
post October 7th.
And before, right. And I can
that doesn't debunk what I said.
And I can tell, but this is what I'm trying to say. Prior to October 7th, and I know this because I used to. This is literally what got me demonetized. Being critical of Israel, or them boys, I know you're on TikTok, I'll keep it clean, would be an instant ban. It would be an instant ban. It wasn't until the atrocities of after October 7th and what Israel did that people started saying, you know what, most Americans, Nick, didn't even know what Zionism was, but prior to October 7th.
True.
They didn't even know. So this war took a very protected class of people in America that were above reproach, and people figured out what they support, and this is why the approval is in the
5 years ago when I was talking about this, right? Because I didn't start talking about, I know maybe you think I am, or a lot of people do. I'm not. I didn't talk about. I didn't grow up around. I was doing content on TikTok talking about just like American politics and right-wing conservative, blah, blah, blah. It wasn't until I started talking about, this is way before October 7th, that I actually got banned. So I believe you. I'm sure there was people getting banned, but I was banned for the exact opposite of what you're saying. It wasn't until I started defending and going against anti-Semitism that I actually got banned. So I'm not saying you're wrong, but
yeah, I don't believe that, but we'll keep going.
You have to understand the exact same thing happened to me for the exact opposite reason.
Bro said he got banned for protecting. Yeah, all right.
I agree with you. Most Americans still to this actually day, I don't think really understand what Zionism is. But my point is that I agree with you. The upswing was after October 7th, but the propaganda and the nonsense of the hyperbole and exaggeration when it does something, even if it does do something wrong, of course they can, they're not perfect. It has to turn into these exaggerated words. The Palestinians are the only people going through genocide, open air prison, concentration camps, apartheid, starvation, level 5 famine, all at the same time. Like, they're the only people in the world. Is that more likely that they're going through all of the biggest atrocities in the world all at the same time in history? Or is it more likely that there's just propaganda and that there's a lot of Hollywood and lying and that's being spread against. Does that mean Israel's perfect? Fuck no.
Well,
no, of course they're not.
You know, they always say the first casualty of war is the truth, right? Like both sides are going to push propaganda for their, you know, for their cause. That's just a part of the game. But
True.
When it comes, just coming back, so I make sure that we covered the genocide thing. When we were talking about the indiscriminate thing, just like I'll just put a bow on this. My argument is 70% infrastructure gone, a significant amount of people dead, children being dead, hospitals destroyed. I think all the hospitals except for one have been destroyed. To me, when you bomb a place to that level, okay, I would say that's very good evidence for indiscriminate bombing. Now, again, just to finish off what I was saying, there was still targeted strikes. There was still discriminate bombing. I'm not saying that didn't happen, but I am saying
Like
that
Myron mentioned earlier, Israel has one of the best intelligence agency. They've had a 10-year pager plan. They can discriminately bomb somebody in the opponents in their ops neighborhood and secretly do it. But when they say, oh, well, we knew Hamas was under the building, they blow the whole block up. Like, they don't just bomb that building, they'll bomb the whole block. Well, we thought they were using these apartment buildings, so we blew them all up. Like, that doesn't make any sense. That just doesn't make any sense.
both
That's like if we said, okay, so we knew the Ayatollah was over here, so we just blew up this whole area instead of just blowing his house up. Like, I don't get it.
both types of bombing were done. Indiscriminate and discriminate. That's my position. What's your you could give
Yeah, well, first off, the hospitals, that's nonsense. The most of all but one of the hospitals have been destroyed. No, of course not. That's not even close to true. Al Najaf Hospital wasn't even touched. There's multiple hospitals. I don't remember all the names. There's 30, I think 6 main hospitals. If you add in other things, which they do
They're
in the
not fully
news about
operational.
hospitals.
Significantly
okay, but that's
limited in capacity.
totally different argument. So you said they were all but one destroyed. Now, if you're saying they're not operational, yeah, but most of them, like for example, on this.
I hate when people do this. You said they were destroyed, but now they're not. Bro? If the hospital is not operational, you destroyed it. Did it go to the ground? No, but niggas can't use the like what? Like, if the game doesn't work, I put the CD in the disc and it just has a little bit of scratches on it, it's destroyed. Did I completely break it in half and crumble it up and smash it into tiny little pieces? No, but the disc is destroyed. It doesn't have to be it's unusable. Like, I didn't get that one.
Najjar Hospital's not. No, it's not actually. For example, Najjar Hospital, and this is how the media kind of twisted. If you look up Najjar Hospital, I remember, because I looked this up some time ago, there's an article that almost implies it's been striked, but it's worded very carefully. The way it's worded is, people leave Al Najjar Hospital due to strikes, but when you
see how he said Al Nazir? Hold on. Yo, why is my fucking clicker acting stupid? This is CNN. Intense bombardment. Only 11 out of 36 hospitals are even partially functioning inside the Gaza Strip. Like, and that's only 11 of them are partially functioning. She didn't even say. They didn't even say it. CNN is fucking Israeli, pro-Israel.
You read the article, it turns out there were strikes down the street, and so out of fear, some people left. But if you read just the headline, people will think, oh, look, Israel destroyed that hospital. And they did this all the time. Even the European hospital, when they took out Mohammed Sinwar, there was some damage, but the actual strike wasn't even on the hospital. It was technically right outside of it. But if you read Al Jazeera, it'll say this was struck, and then people like you turn it into destroyed. But hold on, when you said not fully operational, true, but a lot of the times, including Najat Hospital, for example, the reason it wasn't fully operational is because people just left that area. There wasn't even shelling of that hospital. So there's a big difference, and I want to make sure you're clear, between destroying, not even damaging, destroying all but one hospital, and these hospitals are not quote unquote fully operational or partially operational. That is a big difference.
Okay, so I went ahead and double checked here. It's saying 36 in Gaza, just over half are partially functioning, but none at full capacity. That's kind of where
so you
it's
agree.
At right now.
Well, okay, but so do you agree it was not correct to say all but one were destroyed?
Okay,
When something's not fully operational, it's because people leave that area. It's not because went and just blew the whole thing up. It's because they left the area. When they go back, the hospital's still there. It's not. That's why it's not operational. Not because they blew the whole.
Or because they're not giving them the equipment needed, and they're blowing up the parts of the hospital that might, for example, just because like I said, just because I scratched the disc doesn't mean the disc isn't destroyed. Like, it doesn't work anymore. Did I step on it to tiny little pieces? No. But it doesn't work. I can't use it.
Let me tell you why I said destroyed. Let me be explicit so you understand where I came from with this. I've listened to several doctors talk about their experiences when they were in Gaza rendering aid. They didn't have any of the supplies. They didn't have a sterile environment to work with. They didn't have any.
And that's what literally the doctor was saying in this right here. That's literally what the doctor was saying in this.
Gaza Hospital was the largest functioning hospital in Gaza, but vital medical services there collapsed in late January, according to Doctors Without Borders. After Israel laid siege to Nasser, it left only 5 doctors remaining inside to care for 150 patients. My next guest is one of those 5. Dr. Hatem Rabba told CNN that never in his life had he prayed for example, a patient to survive, because that was his responsibility to save a patient's life as a doctor. But now the fate of his patients is not in his control.
Yeah, so
they needed to effectively do their jobs. Okay,
sounds horrible.
So yeah, and so when I say destroyed, what I am
That's
saying
hilarious.
is, yes, if doctors aren't able to do their jobs because the hospital isn't operational, it's effectively destroyed almost at that point.
Okay,
now
that's just extremely disingenuous. But that's what I
No, it's not. No, it's not. If you can't do anything at the hospital, what the fuck is it there for? The infrastructure so you can go hide in it. Wait, then they're gonna bomb it because the monster there. Like, what? Like, I don't understand. So you take out the doctors, you take out the food, the water, the sterile equipment. What is operational? We just fucking bandaging niggas up now? That's all we do with the bed sheets? I don't.
About pro-pallies is you guys use this extreme hyperbole, and then when you get called out on it, you kind of go, well, what I meant by destroyed was they don't have sterile, like, come on, dude,
if you can't even, because here's the thing, if a hospital is operating at a portion of its functionality, it's effectively destroyed. And I'm going off of what the doctor said themselves. Listen to all them talk. They have no interest.
Is this the same? Is this the same?
Whether it's what are you gonna say? Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, is this the same Doctors Without Borders that let GHF members die just because they didn't want to help Americans? Those doctors? Are we talking about the same doctors that said that they personally saw IDF soldiers snipe kids, but then they later admitted that they weren't even in the field and they weren't even allowed to leave the hospital, so it's impossible to even know who did or didn't snipe? But like, yeah, I agree with you. There's people that go on.
Bro said it's impossible for them to know who did or didn't snipe him when the kids will come in and tell them who did this.
Tucker Carlson.
I spoke.
Yeah.
I listened to a few of the doctors talk about this, and what I'm saying
I
is,
spoke to them too.
based on what they said, it pretty much is. You want to say, hey, destroyed's a tough word. Fine. Pretty much incapacitated.
One of the doctors took a syringe and pumped air into a hostage.
What was that?
One of the doctors took a syringe and pumped air into the hostage to kill them. These the same doctors or different?
I don't know
ones?
I don't know who that is. I've never.
One of the
heard- I
doctors
didn't
was
hear
actually
about that
holding
story.
Noah Argamani as a hostage and an Al Jazeera journalist.
I didn't hear about that story. What I'm telling you though is that the hospitals are now fully functioning. They're effectively destroyed because you can't do what you need to do in a lot of these places. If you want to say destroyed's a too strong of a word, fine. Significantly diminished in their capacity to render aid.
We don't know that. I don't know what partially can mean 1%. It can mean 99% or anything between. I have no idea.
We don't know because we're not there. So this is why we have to rely upon the testimony of the doctors. And they basically all said the same exact thing. I don't have enough resources to do what I need to do. I don't have sterile equipment. I don't have any. I don't have an operating bed to work on. I can't even put them under anesthesia.
She was 22 or 23 years old. Full body surface area burns. And she was unable to speak because she likely had inhalational injury because the same burns that burned her skin likely burned her airway. When we did our secondary survey and tried to understand what other injuries she had a shattered tib-fib from an explosive injury. She had burns that covered over 70% of her surface area, which is a death sentence in an environment where you can't find gauze and there isn't clean water and there aren't antibiotics. We all knew what this meant on the ground in the trauma bay the first minutes we met her. She was gonna die there and her baby would die there. And there was nothing we were gonna be able to do about it because the Israeli government and the IDF had made it impossible to care for people to the extent which they deserve every human.
But guys, we literally watched on Wednesday how they will bomb. Did we watch that on Wednesday? But oh no, I watched that on my own. But what's it called? There is little evidence of a girl and satellite imagery of an IDF tank blowing up a car and then them putting like 300 bullets. And she's on the phone with the like Palestinian ambulance or whatever, 911, telling them to get them the ambulance. And you can hear the gunshots in the phone. Okay? So I'm telling you, it's not like everybody can't just be lying. And look, everybody else is lying, and Israel is just telling the truth. Like that is like crazy.
To medical aid in that situation, she was no fighter. She was a pregnant woman who was sitting in her home when a bomb dropped on her head.
Well, this, of course, as the humanitarian situation in Gaza is only getting worse. James Smith is a British doctor who is in Rafah at the moment. We spoke to him earlier over the phone, and he told us more about what's happening there.
British doctor, let's see what ethnicity this guy is.
I don't know if you can hear that noise in the background. That's the sound of the Israeli drones in the sky. Situation here
looks like.
in or near Rafah now is catastrophic. Several neighborhoods in the east of Rafah yesterday were designated by the Israelis as so-called red blocks. Very shortly afterwards, with very little time for people to flee, they began their air and artillery.
Voice of James Smith's British doctor. Let's see what James Smith looks like. Gaza hospital. Okay, but this is a white British guy. Doesn't look Arab, Muslim, none of that shit. He looks like a white British guy. They're not even allowed to talk about that shit. And he said, "This is what's happening." So I like to see European. I like to see a fucking their faces because maybe the Arab guy might be trying to like the Arab guy that was just on there because he looked like he was Muslim. He might have had a little bias against the Israelis, but the British European, I don't know, guys. I don't know. He should be at least like I don't know. Israel kinda was no, but he said nah. This shit is crazy.
Strike. Several people were killed and more were injured. Al Najjar Hospital, one of the few remaining hospitals in Rafah, has been rendered non-functional. People are so well aware now of the violence that the Israeli military has committed.
Like I said, guys, you have a CD. If I scratch it and it doesn't work, I destroyed my CD. Did I step on it into a tiny million pieces and it's all over the ground and, it's unrecognizable? No. But it's scratched. So now it's destroyed because it's unusable. So the fact that he's using this example of, oh, well, the hospitals aren't all destroyed just because they're not all rubble to the ground, you can't use them. Is the item is destroyed, regardless of how you think of destruction or not. You can't use it no more.
Against patients, against healthcare workers, and against hospital facilities that they have preemptively fled.
Then the hospitals are destroyed, unusable, and then you bomb 70% of the infrastructure. What if only 3%, only 66,000 died?
To try and seek some sanctuary somewhere else. People are literally being pushed towards the sea. There are
they have to move because they're being bombed. So I don't know how he's even
literally tents down to the waterline on the beach, and this is the area that the Israeli military is forcing people to displace to now, a place where people are already living in crowded and undignified conditions. We're seeing patients presenting with acute jaundice syndrome, likely hepatitis, spreading as a result of poor access to clean water and a lack of access to safe sanitary conditions. We're seeing people with awful respiratory infections, diarrhea and vomiting, progressing to dehydration, patients coming in very, very unwell.
That's James Smith, a British doctor in Rafah, speaking to France 24 earlier.
It's funny they keep saying this, but we keep getting videos out of hospitals in Gaza. In fact, during the Abu Shafia, he specifically came out. He was the Kamal Adwan hospital director. He came out and said that his entire hospital, well, and we're not even just talking about a low-end doctor. He was the director. He came out and said his entire hospital was completely shut down. It had no gas, no electricity, nothing. Then the very next day, we see a video of him, not even 12 hours later, of him with people in his emergency room with all the lights on, all the equipment, and beds, everything that you would expect to see in a hospital, even in America, really. And so, yes, I agree with you. Doctors come out and say this shit, and then they end up debunking themselves the day later.
Okay, because the director came out and complained there's no lights and water, and then got attention the next day because there's lights and water. It didn't. I don't get it. Like, just because he. So basically, they can turn the lights and water off whenever they want to at the hospital. Is what you're saying they're allowed to do. Okay.
And
Okay,
the other
Nick.
thing also that's important to remember where this conversation started. This conversation started because I made the argument that there was a significant amount of bombing that was indiscriminate. So if 50% of the hospitals are pretty much not functioning, and then the other 50% are barely functioning, like, you've pretty much destroyed the medical infrastructure.
Not barely.
I'm looking it up
we
right
don't
now.
know.
It says
partially does not mean barely. That's not the same thing. Partially can be a wing shutdown. We have no idea what it means. I'm not saying you're not right or wrong, but I'm saying you're being disingenuous to take that and assume you know what it means.
Well, here's the thing. I'm combining everything. I'm combining the doctor testimony alongside at the hospitals being completely not functional, and then alongside them being half functional, and then I'm combining all of it, and it's like, okay, well.
See, that's the thing with debating the genocide. It's like people have to ignorantly, like, just say, no, you're wrong. Like, they just have to say, no, you're wrong. Like, that's literally the only way people win when it comes to debating a genocide, because the whole world is calling it a genocide, bro. I don't know how you can sit there and not think it isn't.
Well, if you've bombed that many hospitals and that 50% of the hospital infrastructure is gone, well, I would argue, remember, I'm saying all this to back up my claim.
Wait, we're bombing hospitals because the Hamas are in tunnels? That makes sense.
that there was a significant amount of indiscriminate bombing, and I'm using the hospitals as an example of that. That's what I'm trying to say. Now you're saying
your original thing was that all but one hospital was destroyed, and now you're turning it into half of them are partially functioning because,
like, again, I'm gonna keep saying this CD analogy, guys. I'm sorry. When I have a CD and it's scratched, the CD is destroyed. The CD is done. I can say scratched, destroyed, finished. It doesn't matter what I use. I can no longer use the CD. Is it crumpled into? Did I break it into tiny little glass pieces? No, but it's destroyed. Like it's pretty simple. Like, bro is trying to argue. Well, if that whole wing is destroyed, then. So do you think what if they couldn't move the patient in that wing? He just dies. Fuck it. We got the Hamas guy. What?
Of either people had left or
there's no way anybody could have been over there. There's no way anybody important could have been in that wing.
Half are non-functional, and the other half are partially functioning, but none are at full capacity.
Right, and so I have no idea what that means. We don't know the reason. Even if something is not, that doesn't mean it was even attacked or destroyed. There could have been zero shelling on it, and it could be not operational.
How about this one? Since we're nitpicking on partially and we don't know what that means, I'm using the doctor's testimony, but let's go ahead. Let's say they knocked out 50% of the hospital infrastructure completely cooked. That's still indiscriminate.
I don't even think they've done anywhere near that.
I'm looking it up right now. 50% have been destroyed. Like not functional at all.
It was saying 12 of the, 11 out of 36. 40%, if anything.
Percent have been destroyed. No, see, that's the problem.
Hold on. It says right here, half of them are non-functional.
What are you reading right now? I'll look it up.
Damage or destruction in accessibility.
What are you reading right now? I'll look it up right now. What are you reading?
There's a couple different sources here. Vatican News, Next Century Foundation.
Are you reading AI, Myron?
Yeah, but I mean, I Googled it. Like that's where it comes from is AI. It's gonna.
Jesus Christ. Give me the source.
You were using AI when I was on the phone.
I was never, literally never was when I turned.
Oh my goodness. AI literally just finds the information for you and then gives you the sources. It's never that serious. It's literally like Google. Anyways, shout out to Nick and Myron with this debate. This was probably pretty good. I like Nick because he isn't actually informed, but he, like I said, it was a bunch of no, that didn't happen. No, the IDF didn't have those documents. No, they didn't. No, the hospitals aren't really. Partially just means they blew up a fucking garage over there. You know what I'm saying? They blew up the parking garage. It's all right. It doesn't mean they doesn't mean the hospital's not really working. It's just they just blew up the parking garage over there. They don't. It's not that serious. Anyways, we will finish this because this is a long ass debate. We'll probably take a long time on this because it's 3 hours. So we'll probably take about the next week on this. But yeah, this is some good content. Appreciate Nick and Myron for having this debate because Nick fucking demolished Sneeko and made him look crazy. God damn it, Sneeko. Fucking making us look stupid out here. But appreciate Myron for getting his get back. But I am getting out of here. Nice chill Friday today. Appreciate everybody for stopping by. I will see y'all boys on Monday. Peace!
The bitch shaking it, showing it. You this, you that. We laughing at them together. Oh! So stop treating these mother like they mean something.
Let's go to TikTok.